everybody. Welcome to episode 68 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest today is Dean Lettice of the Infernal Sea, one of the best UK black metal bands on the planet right now, alumni of the illustrious Into the Necrosphere Best of 2020 list, and a band that has been very, very highly requested by a lot of you guys. So we finally managed to hook it up. He is here. We spoke for just over an hour about a bunch of different stuff. You guys are thoroughly going to enjoy that conversation, but first, the 2021 Australian campaign continues to roll on from strength to strength. A band called Shiva recently reached out to me, and they have just put out a new single called The Pursuit of Power. I love it. I figured you guys would like it also, and that is why it is my demo of the week.
Bringing all to
Shiva out of Australia with a track called Pursuit of Power. I believe this is going to be on their forthcoming full-length Planet Eater. And like I said, I thought that you guys would enjoy that. I certainly like it. And man, as I said, the Australian campaign goes from strength to strength. The number of great releases that have come out of Australia and that are still lined up to come is just absolutely nuts. And who knows? I might have the guys from Shiva on the show at some point in the not too distant future. If you are an unsigned band and you've just recorded some of your finest work and you would like to experience possibly the greatest honor and thrill that the music industry can bestow on you, then reach out to me on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. Send me your best shit, and if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. And if I really like what I hear, I may even invite you to be a guest on the show. So do that. And if your email is antiquated and you follow me on social media, which, let's be frank, you already should do, then you can also hit me up on Twitter. I'm at iNecrosphere. On Instagram or Facebook, I'm at Into the Necrosphere. So reach out to me and, like I said, send me some of your best work. If this is your first time watching or listening to the show, just a reminder as well that I post new episodes every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, pretty much every streaming platform you can imagine for free. I am never going to start a Patreon page. I am never going to come to you clanging my beggar's cup asking for donations. All I ask is that you, if you do like the show, that is, that you subscribe, like, comment, share, and if possible, leave a review, because the more of those I have, the easier it is for me to navigate the snake pit that are the majority of record labels. Also, if you really like the show and you want to show your love and support, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and get yourself a t-shirt, a tank top, a hoodie, or other Into the Necrosphere branded paraphernalia. And not only are you going to show your love and support to the show, but you're also going to be able to strut the streets looking like a straight-up badass. Finally, coming up after my conversation with Dean, I'm going to be reviewing some new music. The new Culted came out this week, but I am not going to talk about that until next week because I've not had the time to thoroughly listen to it. I will, however, be talking about the new Xeper and the new Feral Light records, both of which I think are well good. And speaking of well good, Negotium Crucis by Infernal Sea is well good. If you haven't listened to it yet, stop what you're doing, listen to the album back to back, and then come straight back and welcome for the first time to Mean Street Studios, Mr. Dean Lettice of the Infernal Sea. Yeah, audio all sounds good, and you look almost as grim as AV when he was on the show for the first time. No. I think second time he didn't have a chance to quite put on the whole garb, but first time he had the bones and everything on as well. But welcome to the show. I think I mentioned this on last week's episode, but I think you guys have been requested for the last 6 months. I know that people are very big fans of what it is that you do, and folks, when I say people, I mean folks that listen to my show. So it feels like this is long overdue.
Nice, pleased to be on here. We've been talking about this for quite a while, haven't we? So
I know.
It's good to finally get on the podcast and follow some great guests that you've been having recently. So
yeah, I know for sure. Well, you're joining a pantheon of guests, and actually one of the things that you did that you joined as well. Possibly one of the highest accolades in the history of music, but you were in the top 20 of 2020 on Into the Necrosphere.
So, yeah, which is great.
How now that I guess the dust has settled around Negotium Crucis being out, I feel like the response to this was really quite overwhelming in terms of at least how one would expect people would respond. I think I mentioned this way back when you guys first released a single off the record, and I was like, it's one of those albums I could just sense is gaining momentum and people want to hear, and there's kind of a real appetite building for it a little bit. It reminded me a bit, at least as far as the momentum is concerned, it reminded me a little bit of the Ecclesiastes record as well. But how do you feel about how people responded to it? The fact that you were on so many, best of lists last year. What's kind of the thoughts around Negotium Crucis? A couple of months after it's been released.
Well, considering the circumstances, we were all really pleased with the outcome, to be honest. Like, releasing an album during a pandemic, which no one's really done before, is a big gamble. There's no live gigs to support it, so you can't go out and tour it. So it was a big gamble, but it's paid off, because at the end of the day, everybody's eyes are focused on the internet. So it's the perfect time. People want to consume music. People want to consume as much as possible. So the reaction to it has been fantastic. It's been a long time coming. I mean, our last release, Agents of Satan, was like 2017. So I think people have been sort of waiting for this. So it was good to actually just get it out there. It's just a shame that we can't tour it just yet, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Did that factor into the release of the record in any way? I mean, did you guys kind of? I guess it's like a Mexican standoff almost. You're kind of sitting there thinking, okay, should we? Shouldn't we? How much of a delay did this bring on, and what made you finally decide to pull the trigger and just go ahead and release it?
So the reality of it is it delayed it slightly, but it wasn't too bad. It was probably 2 or 3 months delay. We just felt that if anybody was going to pull off releasing an album during a pandemic, it'd be us, seeing as we have, plague doctors in the band. It's perfect timing for us, and with the themes that we currently sing about. But it did delay it slightly, and we just felt that now was the right time to do it. There was no point in holding on the album for another year. These are songs that have probably been written a year and a half maybe ago. So it just would have been old material, and it wouldn't have felt great for us, just to keep holding on to that material. So yeah, it was a slight delay, and obviously the production of everything is horrific at the moment. Like, vinyl was taking 6 months to produce, CDs are taking ages, cassettes taking ages. So it does have a knock-on effect. But imagine if you'd waited a year and then decided to release it after the pandemic had disappeared, if it disappears. But like, you're going to have so much of a backlog. Yeah. You're just going to be at the bottom of the list anyway. So it just made sense to just roll with it, really.
Did you see any sort of impact, good or bad, during the pandemic to things like merchandise sales, stuff like that? Because I mean, I know you guys do some fucking great T-shirts, and I generally speaking, obviously I follow you on social media, so I constantly see stuff being sold out. It almost feels to me like, and I'm probably one of those people, but you sit at home bored, and you kind of, there's nothing to look forward to. So the only thing that you can do to have something to look forward to is to buy something. Did you guys see sales increase when you were during the pandemic lockdown?
To be honest, we've been quite lucky. So even before the lockdown, we've always done really well in merch. So yeah, there has been an increase, but then we have been releasing a lot more stuff, constantly, monthly, during this pandemic, to just to make the most of it and to kind of keep in the limelight as well. But yeah, the merch sales have risen. More people are taking a chance on music, which is good. But yeah, as I said, before we've always done really well on merch.
Yeah. And one of the most interesting items of merchandise, obviously, that you guys are offer up is the medieval inspired tee, which I didn't even know about until I went on your website. What kind of got you guys the idea for doing that, and what's the process of getting something like that off the ground? Because it's something that I think fits so perfectly with you as a band, but not something that I guess any band would immediately think of or maybe have in their mind to be able to do.
I mean, we always come up with these ideas, these crazy ideas of, releasing something on some merchandise of some kind. But like with the tea, it was kind of, we joked around and we were like, yeah, let's put out the Infernal tea. And then it just kind of clicked with all of us. And we thought, you know what, actually, that's a really good fucking idea. Like, who's releasing tea? Which black metal bands are releasing tea? None. Yeah. Everyone does coffee. Everyone does, alcohol of some kind. We just thought we're an English black metal band. Tea is perfect, and keeping it in medieval themed and it just sits well with our concept. So it was just perfect, really. And we just thought, we've got the balls. Let's just do it and put it out. And it's been really well received. you get a few naysayers, but who gives a shit what they say? It's like at the end of the day, it's black metal tea. It's a cool idea.
Yeah. Did you guys go and have like tastings and stuff while this was all in production? Did you, how much of a say did you have in the end product? If you exclude things like the branding, the band name, the logo, etc.
Quite a lot. So the woman we worked with was really good. She was really good at like suggesting ideas and coming up with some, certain blends and inspirations, because she's actually quite knowledgeable on all that sort of stuff. So she'd send us some samples. We probably tried about 10 different samples and narrowed it down to the 3 that we released. And we just tasted them. We'd go back to her and say, look, this needs to be a darker tea, because we wanted to keep it as dark as possible, just to keep with the theme of black metal. But we'd go back to her and say, the consistency needs to be stronger, blah, blah, blah. And it was good. So we'd most of it was sampled at home, because she's a bit further away in the UK. So, but there was a lot of to-in and fro-in, and just getting it sorted, really.
I was just about to say, how did she respond when initially she asked you, what are your ideas on a blend? And you said, I'm looking for the most satanic blend that you can possibly come up with.
Do you know what? She absolutely loved it, because we went full in and said, we're this satanic themed black metal band from the UK, and we want to release tea. And she literally replied and was just like, I'm in. There was no doubt in a lot of businesses would just avoid you and just, they'd be like, no, I'm not touching this band. But yeah, she was in straight away, and she's been great all along.
So, I mean, you guys have been having you've had the Plague Doctor imagery for quite a significant period of time over the course of the band's history. Did you get any shit or any blowback about that? Obviously, it's featured in the in your music video. It's something that you guys definitely didn't shy away from with the new record. Excuse me, and I think it's really, really timely as well, considering the scenario we're in right now. But did anybody kind of point out or moan or say it's in bad taste or whatever the case may be when you put Negotium Crucis out?
No one said a thing. Everyone seems to really enjoy it, and everyone said that we've been quite prophetic in the way that with the Great Mortality, it's all about the Black Death. So they said that we kind of prophesized this pandemic, which is pretty cool for us, I guess. But image-wise, it's just a perfect combination, isn't it? It just seems to have perfect timing in a horrible situation, I guess. But no, we've not had any shit. People like it. That's the main thing.
How far down the rabbit hole have you gone on the whole history of plagues, the Black Death, etc.?
So we did the European Black Death of like 1349 and around that period. We've not delved too far from the album. So each album has a different theme. So obviously the Great Mortality was about the Black Death that ravaged Europe in 1349. The new album is actually about the Knights Templar and the way that the church sort of just massacred thousands of people in the name of Christianity, but it's still set within that medieval time frame. And I think going forward with other albums, they won't necessarily be plague based or whatever, but they always will have that link, to medieval history, basically.
Yeah. So on kind of that topic of the Knights Templar, because I've read an awful lot about history, but I think the specific things I've always read about or have always been drawn to have been things like the First and Second World War, the Vietnam War, etc. The Knights Templar is not something I've really ever paid an awful lot of attention to. Can you kind of sort of nutshell at least some of the themes that you're talking about, on this record as relates to that history? And I guess also, what kind of got you interested in that as a particular period to write music about?
The period is something that I've always been interested in history wise. It's a grim time, like so much horrible shit happened, and it lends itself perfectly to the music. The Knights Templar were a military order that was sanctioned by the church to sort of indoctrinate anybody that wasn't of the Christian faith into Christianity, and to indoctrinate them in any means possible. And basically they were just given the free rein to do whatever they wanted, and they would go out and they would siege castles and massacre thousands of people just because they didn't support Christianity. And it was just horrific. And a lot of people, when you think of the Knights Templar, you kind of, what's the word? Not idolize, but they're sort of, I can't think of the word.
They're kind of lionized, I think is the right word.
Yeah. So you kind of look at them in a good light, but they
Yeah.
weren't. You know, they were horrible. They were just bastards that did a lot of really bad stuff. You know, and if you look into it, it's such a rich history to explore. You know, I'd urge anyone to go back and, you know, look up the Knights Templar and stuff and see what they actually did, because yeah, it's just unreal.
What are some, you mentioned earlier, that it was, for them it was about coercion, and they anyone that wasn't falling in line with a Christian message, would essentially be indoctrinated by any means necessary. What are some of the methods that they used to indoctrinate people?
There were so many different methods. There would be purification by fire, so they'd just basically say yield to Christianity, or just die by the sword, or die by fire. They just round people up and just just massacre them if they didn't accept the Christian faith. A lot of people would actually lie and say, yeah, we'll yield to this, and we'll believe in Christianity, but then secretly they carried on believing their own faith. Unless they got caught, then they were beheaded or tortured or whatnot. But yeah, they just, any means possible, they would do anything they wanted.
And what sort of, I mean, when you mention other faiths in Europe at the time, is that referring to paganism? What were some of the other more dominant religions?
It was all like Judaism. It was just because obviously they ransacked sort of the Middle East. So yeah, just any religion at all, really, that this wasn't Christian, the Christian faith. They just tried to stop.
Yeah. And how would they find out about somebody, not being a Christian, or somebody that, not being of the correct faith?
That I'm not sure, but to be honest, they probably didn't care. They probably just, were told to go and attack, say, Jerusalem and the Holy Land, and just take it by any means necessary. I think the church just wanted to take as much control as possible, and just rule as much as the land as possible, especially the Holy Land, because it's the sacred land, isn't it?
Yeah. There's that kind of biblical connection to it as well. I ask those things because it's interesting, some of the parallels in what you've mentioned, with things that have happened, all across, all across history. If you look at the Russian Revolution, there wasn't purification by fire, but there was certainly a pretty grave threat to your health and well-being if you were not going to fall in line. Same with the Chinese Revolution. I feel like in some ways we're starting to see some of the elements of that fermenting right now. In the way that the certain factions of the far left or the far right are behaving towards people that have centrist or moderate views on life. You kind of either part of what they want you to think, or there's your livelihood, your ability to function properly, or function as an equal, or I'm sorry, a member of society of equal standing, is suddenly in quite a significant amount of danger.
Definitely. I mean, history's just been constantly repeating itself, hasn't it? And obviously, if you look through the history books and see everything that's happened, it's a shame to say that not really much has changed. I think as humanity goes on, we're going to keep repeating these same problems.
Yeah, and it is. I was just about to say, it doesn't seem like we've learned an awful lot from it either.
I don't think
you have in recent memory. Again, if you look at the Russian Revolution and everything that Stalin did, at least 20 million dead. As much as potentially 100 million dead as a result of the Chinese Revolution, and yet the same insane ideas are being pushed by people again now. And in all likelihood, unless it's kind of stopped, or unless people en masse decide to go a different way, it's I sometimes think people take for granted how thin the veneer is that holds civilization together, and how quickly things escalate from we don't like those people or we disagree with those people to now we're going to kill all of the people that disagree with us.
Yeah, it's scary, really, isn't it? And you'd hope that in this day and age that we do seem to have a little bit more control to try and prevent those, events from happening or to stop them. But yeah, as you say, with the things that have been happening recently, it's dangerous, really, isn't it?
Well, it's also, I would almost say if it happens to this generation of people, there's less of an excuse for them to be in the situation that they're in, because we have such a rich history, and history teaches us so many lessons of what happens when you go down the path that you're going, that in generations past, maybe they could turn around and go, well, we didn't know, we didn't realize, we got into this with the best of intentions and things fell apart. But really now, our generation, and the people that are behind some of these decisions, surely there's enough in history that tells you that what you're doing isn't smart, or tells you that what you're doing, generally speaking, doesn't turn out well.
Maybe we're failing in the education system for some of these people, that they're not aware of these situations that have occurred in the past, and that could be one of the issues. It also depends on upbringings, doesn't it, and how their parents or the grandparents have led them in their way of thinking. Product of your environment as well. It is hard, because you do see some, certain countries that are on the threat of just losing control. And your mind sits there and thinks, how is that even possible? Because obviously here we've kind of got things under a lot more control in the UK in a way. So you see other countries and you just think, how is this possible? Why is this happening? Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think there's kind of these two factions that work in this symbiotic relationship. I think one faction potentially unknowingly, but I think you've got elites that have, only one kind of mode of existence, and that is to gain as much power as possible. So coming back to what you were saying about the church, it's the political class as an example is no different. They want as much money, as much influence, and as much power as possible. And then you've got the useful idiots, where I completely agree with you. The education system has failed them. A lot of what you would call the average person doesn't know anything about how finance works. They don't know anything about how the economy works. They don't know how foreign policy works. They don't really know the mechanisms of government. So therefore, it becomes extremely easy to manipulate them in what, whether to the extremes of the left or the extremes of the right. All they're kind of left with, without any sort of knowledge of how things work, is to function on emotion. And if they either feel afraid, or they feel good, or they feel morally superior, or whatever the case may be, that's the direction, whichever way the wind blows, that's the way that they're going to end up going. So whoever tells them the story that convinces them most, they'll believe. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. And I agree with you. I think a big chunk of that comes down to the failing of the school system, which then at the same time, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you kind of look at it and you go, well, is that by design? Do they genuinely want to keep people stupid and keep people ignorant because it's easier to manipulate them? I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
So the plague doctor imagery and stuff like that, I love, because I think it's so unique, and I think it creates such a there's a real kind of sinister vibe to it that I think lends itself really well to you guys in particular. How did you guys come up with that idea? What made you go down that route as opposed to, the typical corpse paint, spikes, and all of the standard black metal garb?
The corpse paint aspect didn't really feel fitting for us. It was just something that we didn't feel comfortable with. There's bands out there that still do the corpse paint thing, and they do it really well. There's a lot of bands that don't, and we just didn't want to be a part of that as such. We've got nothing against the corpse paint and the spikes. It can look cool, but it's just not us. So we wanted to go for something, like you said, something a bit more sinister and terrifying, and basically the idea to kind of mask ourselves, and mask our identities, just, I think it helped sort of amplify and express the music a lot more. And we just settled upon the Plague Doctors because, we've always had that medieval interest in the history side of things. And yeah, it just kind of lent itself. We felt that the Plague Doctors would be perfect.
How uncomfortable is it for you to play in the outfit that you're in, though? Like when you're live, because I mean, your vocals are very aggressive, and like what I pick up from album is obviously you're they're really kind of getting squeezed out of your diaphragm. So how is it uncomfortable for you to play like that? I mean, I could imagine from my limited experience on stage, it's fucking boiling in there.
Yeah, it's fucking awful, and the thing
so
is,
you suffer for your art, in other words.
Pretty much, yeah. We seem to always play in the summer as well, which is ridiculous because the robes are so fucking thick and the mask is so tight. And then, you're playing in this 30-degree heat and it's just insane. It's horrible. And you've got the lights blaring down on you as well. But it's not nice. But again, we just suffer as well. And it is really exhausting as well. I put quite a lot into my vocals. As you mentioned, it really takes it out of me, but that's a good thing. That's how I get that projection.
Did you ever do any of the the Melissa Cross vocal lessons or anything like that, or have your vocals been entirely self-taught?
So I've been doing vocals for quite a long time in different bands. I did go down the Melissa Cross route for a while. I gave that a little try. The warm-up techniques, kind of helped. But I kind of went through a period where my voice was getting blown out all the time. I was, slightly unfit and it just wasn't working. And this was pre the Infernal C days. But I actually went for singing lessons and I probably did 5 or 6 singing lessons, and it didn't benefit me in the way of, that I came out of it being able to sing, but it benefited me in the fact that it taught me how to warm up my voice. An hour to sing, from the diaphragm and actually really project your vocals. So it was really beneficial for that. And ever since then, before every show, I'll always do warm-ups, and that's how I keep that sustainability. And yeah, it's really helped having lessons.
Yeah. And so with your warm-ups, how long do you gargle the cat blood before you're ready to go on stage? We used to have that when I was young and growing up in South Africa. I mean, the crazy shit that comes out there with people's stories they make up about metal music is just nuts. But the one that was the most hysterical, there were 2 actually. I'll tell you the one, and I'll tell you the one about the cat blood. But the one that was the most hysterical was about and a teacher actually legitimately told this to a classroom full of kids. If you listen to metal, you can see demons flying from the speakers of whatever stereo equipment you're listening to it on. And if you're a good enough Christian, you can actually see the angels do battle with them and try to protect the home. And this, I mean, she said this with like a straight face, and all the kids sat there, gasping for breath. How amazing, the angels are protecting us from the scourge of metal music. But the other one was that Brian Johnson of AC/DC, he can only get his voice to sound like that by drinking cat blood prior to every show that they play. But I was going to ask you the Melissa Cross stuff. Was your voice getting blown out, after trying some of her techniques, or before, or did you kind of look her up because of your voice getting blown out?
So it's before, yeah. And then someone recommended Melissa Cross, picked up the DVD, and there's hundreds of warm-ups on there. It was beneficial, it was helpful, but I did find it a bit convoluted. There was a lot on there to try and take in, and I felt that it was more appropriate to be with somebody that could actually, stand in the same room as you and actually say, right, this is how you need to project your voice. This is, where you're not getting enough power from. So yeah, a one-on-one was actually a lot more better, for me. But yeah, it is a good DVD. And I mean, she obviously helped out a lot of bands that have been struggling, that do, ridiculous touring cycles. And I think it's good that she was one of the first to do that as well, because that kind of put the sort of vocals that we do into the mainstream. You know, before everybody just felt that it was just, as they say, rah-rah noises, which, you know, whenever someone says that, it just pisses me off. But like, people don't think there's any technique or skill to it, and actually there is. There's a lot of technique and skill to it. You know, that you can, a lot of people can just scream, but you'll just shred your voice, you know, you'll fuck your vocal cords up, and, you know, that's not good. So you have to really learn to sing from the gut and push that and get that power. But, you know, there's a lot of vocalists that will struggle after half an hour's set, and, you know, their voice is completely gone, or and I think she helped, you know, people to understand that and realize that, you know.
You mentioned earlier the fitness aspect of it as well. Did you find that your voice got better as you were getting more, you know, as you were focusing on your fitness more?
So I've never really focused on my fitness as such, because I'm a lazy, but it was just more that I knew that I needed to open up my lungs a lot more. I mean, the difficult thing for me as well is actually that I'm quite a bad asthmatic, and my lung capacity is really, really shit. So it surprises me that I can actually get, you know, the power that I do, because I'm told that my lungs are something like 40% capacity or something stupid. So, yeah, it was just about watching what I was, you know, eating and doing. And like I say, there was a period where I did kind of pack the weight on a little bit and decided to get rid of that. But that helped a lot as well, because it just, you know, it allowed your lung power to be more powerful, really.
Yeah. And you I guess you don't have all of that weight bearing down on you, so it becomes a little more easy to project. And you know, because at the same time as what you're, you know, you doing your vocals, you're moving around on stage as well. So you know, with all of that heavy shit all over you. So
and I find that guttural style of vocals are completely different to shrieky style of vocals. It feels like it's a completely different part of your diaphragm, you know, that you're singing from. So it takes a lot more out of you to do the shrieks, personally. You know, it might be why we see a lot of the bigger guys doing the more death metal stuff.
Yeah. And I find I'm starting to notice a lot of bands kind of, a lot of black metal bands even, you know, will kind of bring in more of the guttural stuff than, you know, maybe they would have done on prior records. And it's actually a good point that you make. And I'm wondering now, as you say that, whether it's not a case of when they do it live, it's just easier to do those vocals, or at least have that as a bit of a break from the shrieks than to do that consistently.
Well, when I went for these lessons, they actually said that it's quite damaging for your voice to go up and down the scales, because you're going from quite a high extreme to quite a low, you know, baritone as such. And it can be quite damaging. So they actually said that you're better off, you know, sticking to one or the other, because it's just more beneficial for your voice.
So the whole do re mi fa so bullshit, that's they discourage that?
No, that's good for warming up your voice. But I think due to the extremity of the style of vocals, you're just putting a lot of strain onto your vocal cords.
Yeah. And tell me, did the singing coach, did they know that you were there to kind of become a better black metal vocalist, or did you go in under the auspices of, you know, we've got the local Christmas Carol chapter coming up, I want to be ready for that?
Yeah, I just literally went in and just said, look, I'm looking to, you know, do some lessons and learn how to warm up my voice and stuff, and try to sing. But yeah, I sound like a cat drowning, so there was no point in that, and just decided to go for the sort of vocal warm-up exercises.
Yeah. So how long do you warm up before you go on stage now?
It's probably like 15-20 minutes. Sometimes it's really difficult because, you know, depending on where you play, there's nowhere to kind of go and warm your voice up, so you feel like a complete twat walking around, you know, doing the scales and sort of blowing raspberries with your lips, because that helps like warm up your vocal box. But like, yeah, so it can be a bit difficult. If there's no dressing room as such, then you're just wandering around the streets looking like some crazy madman. But I tried to do it for 15-20 minutes if possible, and then I do some breathing exercises to really open up your lungs.
I mean, you guys have also had, I guess, the privilege and the pleasure of touring with a bunch of, really great bands and bands that, I think everybody that listens to the show looks up to, like Akrokaka and El Nathrak, bands like that. Have you ever looked at any of those guys? I guess, what have you learned from your experience of being, or sharing a bill, sharing a stage, or going out playing with them?
You do learn a lot from other bands, but, especially bands that have been around for such a long time. And you'll get tips from each other, and that's really helpful. You just learn how to treat people right and how to be professional about it. There's no point in being in a band and being a complete and utter fucking dick to the promoters and to the fans and to everyone around, because it doesn't get you anywhere. Have some respect. So yeah, you kind of learn that from the bands, and that's just a good thing to have, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you guys have been with Apocalyptic Witchcraft, if memory serves me correctly, most of your career?
Yeah, so Agents of Satan, that's when we did that was the first Apocalyptic Witchcraft release. So that was, 2017.
All right, yeah. So, sorry, then I was mistaken. So Great Mortality, you guys released independently.
So no, Great Mortality was actually released via Cacophonous.
Oh, okay.
Call of the Arga, the first album, was actually released independently. Yeah. And then we did split after that with Old Corpse Road, which was via Free Sword Records. But yeah, then Cacophonous picked us up. But then Cacophonous swiftly folded again for the second time. And then, we went on to AW and kind of stuck with them since.
Well, what has it been like working with them? Because again, this was something I mentioned last week on the show. I am, generally speaking, not really a fan of record labels for a number of reasons. I think it's a great thing that Bandcamp is there now and allows bands to put out stuff and get to a relatively decent level of I wouldn't say fame, but you know what I mean. Get to a decent level in terms of fans, etc. Out, their ability to reach out to folks. Just through using Bandcamp or using social media. But I will definitely say Apocalyptic Witchcraft, from my experience of talking to Connor and dealing with them as a label, are without a doubt one of the good ones, one of the best ones. And I think the roster of talent that they have on the label right now, for me, absolutely, you guys, Crimson Throne, bands like that. To me, that's the tip of the spear of this really, really exciting, English black metal scene that's kind of emerged over the last 5-6 years.
They've certainly got their ear to the ground, and as you say, Connor's been around for a long time, working with various labels, and he gets it. They've been great, to be honest. Like, they support us in every aspect that we, every aspect's possible. Like, if we come up with crazy ideas, they normally run with them. They just let us have creative control, which is exactly what you want from a label. And yeah, they've got our backs. They're 100% behind us.
Yeah. I've often wondered with black metal in particular, and I would imagine you've never been in a situation where a label would have told you, we want you to do more of this, and these Dimmu Borgir guys, they make a lot of money, so we want you to introduce some orchestral stuff in your music. But black metal seems to me it's such an anomaly, I would imagine, for labels to try and dictate to black metal bands how they should sound, or try and kind of interfere creatively in what you're doing. Have you ever been aware of any of that sort of thing happening? I mean, or actually, has anything like that ever happened to you?
No, we've been lucky with that, really. To be honest, I think if anyone came at us and said, look, change your music to sound like this, we'd probably just tell them to fuck off, because primarily you're writing music for yourselves, and that's what we do. We write the music that we like, and then if other people like it, then great. And actually, Negotium Crucis is a lot different to the Great Mortality. Has a lot more of a black and roll vibe to it, and that's a direction that we've started to head it towards. It's something that we've always been conscious of, and something that we've always wanted to achieve. And we just feel like now we're kind of getting that style down. But yeah, we just kind of do what we want to do.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on my review. I think black and roll is if I think of a lot of the bands that are associated with that. I almost felt like it was a slightly unfair tag to give you guys, because I thought that what you do, generally speaking, is so much more aggressive and intense than the average black and roll band. And when I think of the average black and roll band, I'm thinking of, probably Cold or Crevel Attack or something like that. And I think what you guys do is a big step up from any of that stuff. But it's interesting that you mentioned that that you guys have kind of consciously been moving in a direction where you're incorporating more of those elements.
Well, we all grew up listening to heavy metal. We're all heavy metal fans. Like, we love all the old school rock stuff, the old traditional new wave of British heavy metal. That's kind of what we grew up with and what we're still listening to now. So it makes sense to bring those influences into the band. And, it's funny that you say Crevel Attack, because, we all really like Crevel Attack. It's a good influence. Like, they sort of marry that black metal and rock and roll sound perfectly, and like I say, we've just been starting to put all our sort of old school metal influences in, our punk elements in, even mixtures of like hardcore elements in there, and it all just goes into that melting pot of the Infernal Sea. And I think that's what makes it unique.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Where did that journey begin for you? What were the first bands that kind of caught your attention, and got you interested in heavier music?
Iron Maiden was the first band that I got into, really. Growing up, my dad was a rocker, my mum was a punk. So I was introduced to all, the old 70s punk with the Pistols and the Buzzcocks and Sham 69 and stuff like that, and even like Northern Soul and Oi music. And then, my dad was into sort of like Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, and his brother, he seemed to be into the cooler stuff. So he was into Guns N' Roses, he was into Iron Maiden, he liked Metallica and Bon Jovi and stuff like that. And whenever I'd go around I'd see Seventh Son of a Seventh Son or Number the Beast on vinyl, and I'd be like, can I borrow this? And, most of the time he'd tell me to piss off. But then one day he kind of just, here you go, lent me Number the Beast, and that was pretty much it. And then I was quite lucky that actually one of my dad's friends, who's a good friend of mine as well, like, he's always been into Maiden and Deep Purple and stuff. And, so you'd see his collection and you'd just be always in awe over it. And then after that, it was just, you just started to discover more of these bands. You started to discover the thrash, and then it started to get heavier, and you'd start going into sort of like the death metal stuff, and then the grindcore stuff, and then sort of the gore grind stuff and the porno grind stuff. Like, it just got more and more extreme to try and find, sort of what style of metal you really liked. And then we all eventually settle on a certain style of bands that we like. But Maiden was the first one, and Maiden is still one of my favorite bands. Like, it stuck with me, and yeah.
How old were you when that all began?
So I would have been around about 11. So yeah, maybe 11, 12. And then obviously, when I was at school, started chatting to people that were all into the same thing. One of my best mates was into Megadeth, and then another guy was into sort of like Metallica, and then you just kind of start talking to each other and start tape trading back in the days, and just start discovering more and more bands that way. And it was great. It was a great time.
I mean, I was obviously a massive tape trader when I was young, because CDs were so expensive in South Africa that for me to be able to afford one, that would have been probably 2-3 months pocket money. So it was just not something that I was gonna do much of. But I feel like, and I was curious to get your thoughts on this as someone who did it themselves. I do feel like a lot of the magic of discovering metal and kind of being part of the scene in the time that we were. I mean, I don't exactly know the time frame that you're talking about. For me, I'm kind of talking, late 80s, early 90s. I do feel like part of the magic in the scene actually came from the tape trading and came from the friendships that you built up because of that.
Definitely, 100%. I mean, I enjoyed going to distros or going into, record shops, and you'd be flicking through the metal section and you'd be looking at these bands, and if they had like a ridiculous logo, then you'd be like, okay, this is going to be some sick death metal band. And you'd
How
look
many
at
how many pentagrams in the logo? All right, this one
exactly.
looks like it could be good.
And if they were all on the same label as, bands that you liked, you kind of knew that they would be similar. You'd look at the thanks list, see what bands they thanked, and that was how you kind of discovered music. Or, your friends would give you a tape. I mean, they're not heavy, but I remember a friend giving me Pearl Jam's 10, and that just never left my Walkman for like 2 months. It was just constantly on. And it's such an amazing record that even now, I can listen back and it gives me, chills. But they were it was an innocent time, and it was a great way to discover music. And even just going to shows, you would literally go to a show and you'd watch every band on that bill, because if there was 5 bands, chances are that a couple of them you were going to really like, if you were going for the headliner anyway. And you just discovered and absorbed so much of it. Yeah. I feel that is lost now with the internet age, because it just feels very throwaway. You can listen to something for 30 seconds and go, nah, I'm not going to bother. But if back in the day, if you brought a CD for 15 quid, you fucking listened to that. If you hated it on first listen, you listened to that about 20 times until you liked it. Because you were like,
I agree.
I've spent 15 quid on this, I'm going to like this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There was, I've said this many times on the show before, there was a lot more value in those days because you had to hand over money to get music, and it wasn't just something that you could just flick on, an app, and there's all the music in the world that you want at your fingertips. And I do think, and again, something I've spoken about many times, I think that's translated into the response that you see at shows as well. The shows aren't nearly as crazy as they used to be. You don't get that same level of kind of passion and intensity, and people losing their minds when the band come on stage. Everything just seems all even seeing Slayer at their farewell show, for the most part, the audience just stood there and they just looked at the band. They were like, well, go ahead and impress me. And you take that back to 2003 when I saw them the first time, and people lost their fucking minds when that band came on stage. I mean, it was bedlam to a point where you were literally fearing for your life. And I miss that. That to me is part of the fun was part of the fun of going to shows, even if I wasn't always involved in it. I like that feeling. I like that sense of excitement and anticipation and danger that you get. But I do think you only get it from people that are, some dedicated motherfuckers, to borrow a phrase from Phil Anselmo.
Well, I saw Slayer back in '99, Slayer Sepultura, and I think System of a Down opened, and that was at the Astoria, and I've never seen anything like it. Like, funnily enough, I actually got hit by a car the week before, so I was in a bit of pain. But
holy shit!
I went to this gig, and I was like, I ain't fucking missing Slayer and Sepultura. I went to this gig, and the whole of I don't know if you would know it, but there was a venue called the Astoria in London.
I know it very well, mate.
And yeah, fantastic venue. Such a shame that that's gone. But went to see them there, and the whole floor was the pit, and it was insane. As soon as the first note of Slayer hit, like, I literally got the shit kicked out of me by these big sort of fucking Slayer skinhead fans, but you came out of it and was like, you know what? Yes, that was amazing. And it's a memory that lives with me, like seeing Pantera in '98 and getting pushed into the pit to fucking Hostile. And again, I got absolutely battered by these people, but I came out just thinking, that's it. This is what I want to do, like, it's an incredible feeling, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, so again, it's funny you mentioned the Astoria, because last week's episode of, as we're recording this, the episode's going up tomorrow. I was just mentioning in the news segment where I just kind of rant on for 15, 20 minutes. I was mentioning the London Astoria and the Mean Fiddler in particular. And I said, I count myself extremely lucky that I got to experience London during that time. Like, I arrived here in 2002, and I got to experience what I would really deem to be, one of the glory ages of London, which was 2002 to 2008, really before the gentrification kicked in. And nowadays, I feel like all of the best things of London have been really marginalized or taken away. And mostly just the shit remains. I mean, the restaurants are better now than when I came. But in terms of music, there was something to me that died when the Astoria and the Mean Fiddler left, and there's a part of me that wishes I could go back in time and remind myself, as much as I went to, I mean, for a period of time I was probably going to 2-3 shows a week. Just savor this moment, no matter how much annoyance there is, no matter how much the bathroom stinks, no matter how fucking scraggly the metalheads are that you're with, or that you're seeing in the audience. Savor it, because this is not going to last forever, and what you're experiencing right now is something that, one, you're going to talk about for the rest of your life. A bunch of other people are going to talk about it for the rest of their lives. But it really is something extraordinarily special, and there's something really magical about it. And when you were kind of mentioning, seeing Slayer again, thinking back to when I saw them in, I think it was either 2002 or 2003. I remember there was a band that opened up for them called Ellis, which was the worst opening band anyone could possibly have chosen, like a female-fronted Evanescence clone. And the audience is booing and fucking carrying on. I mean, they gave them such a hard time. Most people in the audience turned their back towards them, and it was just a complete mess. And then, you have that build up, and it's, people are yelling Slayer, Slayer, Slayer. And then, as soon as those lights go down and the inverted crosses show up on stage, every silhouette that walks on stage, and another band member, people are just going more and more nuts. And when that opening song hit, the crowd was screaming and shouting so loudly, you couldn't even hear the band play. At least for the first 2 songs, you couldn't hear jack shit. You heard a bit of Tom coming over the PA, you heard the drums and stuff, but most of what you heard was just the crowd just going fucking nuts.
Yeah. And again, it's such, like you say, you're talking about it now, it's such a great feeling to have that and those memories. And I don't want to sound like that person, but you go to gigs now and a lot of people are just on their phones and no one gives a shit. And it's like, why are you watching the gig through the phone? Live in the moment, enjoy it, because you don't know if this is going to be the last time you ever get to see this band, or if anything's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I guess back in that time, we didn't necessarily have the phones to sort of distract us.
Well, I was just about to say we left our phones at home because you knew there was a very good chance your phone was either getting lost to the pit or getting smashed if you took it with you. So, I remember, I would, generally speaking, always leave my phone at home. I would always just take cash with me. I didn't take my wallet. I took nothing just in case, things things got a little hairy when I was in the pit.
Which they always often did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw no end of bands at Mean Fiddler and Astoria, and all different kinds of bands. One week you'd see Morbid Angel and Christian. Another week you'd see Cannibal Corpse. Then you'd see Green Day during the Dookie tour, and then you'd see Fear Factory or Cradle of Filth, or then you'd go and see Lagwagon and all the Fat Record punk bands, and it was just fantastic time, because there was so much diversity to it. And you'd literally just go and see whoever you could, seeing Hatebreed or whoever at the Mean Fiddler and getting someone roundhouse kick you in the head because you wasn't looking, but it's just great memories.
What was the wildest pit that you were ever in?
Wildest pit. Strangely enough, do you ever remember a band called 1 Minute Silence?
Yeah.
So 1 Minute Silence played, and it was insane. They got a circle pit that was pretty much the whole of the venue, but it was going 2 ways. So one circle pit was going clockwise, the other was going anti-clockwise.
Yeah.
My friend actually got caught in between the 2 clockwise motions and nearly bust his arm because he got pulled in the wrong direction. But that was just insane. There was people climbing all over the shop, all over the stage, jumping off, the stage divers, crowd surfers, circle pits. It was just like, fuck, But again, that Slayer one where the whole pit was just everyone just out to smash everyone. It was just, that was insane as well.
Yeah. No, so for me, I definitely think there was a couple that come to mind. Biohazard, the first time I saw them, that was insane. I've never experienced anything like that before. I thought at the time that the crowd would be completely spent, and when Biohazard started playing, they went fucking ballistic. A couple of the Stamping Ground pits that I saw as well were it was out of this world. I mean, I don't know whether, can you remember Stamping Ground?
I used to play a lot of shows with Stamping Ground, and I used to go to a lot of shows. So yeah, I used to not follow them around, but we used to go to a lot of shows that Stamping Ground played. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you know what Adam used to do when when he got up onto the PA, onto the riser, and jumping into the audience. I mean, it was such a. The thing about that was it wasn't just the fact that it was cool that he was doing it, but he was such a fucking great front man. He looked like a front man. Muscled up. Standing there without his shirt on. He'd be like a pro wrestler, like standing on the top of the PA before he jumps down. But like every single one of their songs was just written so that somebody can get fucked up when they play it live. That was just amazing. I remember a couple of others. I remember Deicide the first time I saw them. That was really crazy. Napalm Death the first time I saw them as well. The audience just lost it. Just went absolutely fucking ballistic. Obituary as well. The one I was at, I remember seeing Suffocation the first time and actually thinking like, this is like someone is actually going to die in this place if they don't, if the security isn't there to step in, someone's going to get killed. But like I said, man, just so many great memories. And I agree with you on the diversity as well. There was always something going on. I remember one night thinking to myself just how crazy it is that I was watching Mastodon at the Camden Underworld. Up the road at the Astoria, I think it was Damage Plan that was playing. And then there was some death and black metal band. I'd seen them a couple of times, which is why I wanted to see Mastodon instead. They were playing at the Mean Fiddler. And then there was something at the Monarch as well. And it was just, like I said, you could kind of, you thought about it and go, I could literally watch this Mastodon set and just walk up to the Astoria and go watch Damage Plan. And then you go, where else would I get to experience that in my life?
No, it's true. It like you say, it was a good time, and it's good that some of them venues are still hanging on. It's great that the Underworld is still there, because I went to the Underworld a lot. I played a lot of Underworld shows as well, and I love that venue. It's a great little venue. I saw Immortal play in the Underworld, which was just insane, and that was the days before any sort of barriers, in front of the stage to stop you getting anywhere near them. But yeah, it's good to see that some of them are still hanging on. But then, like you say, a lot of them have gone, and that whole sort of area with the Astoria, because you'd go look at the record shops and you pick up some records for down Dean Street and stuff like that, and then you'd go and get some food or whatever, and most of the time you'd end up in the sex shop for a laugh, and then you'd go to the Astoria and just try and get on the balcony because you could see everything so much better there. It was cool.
Yeah, it was fucking amazing. As I said, I really miss those days, and I do. A part of me does feel like when everything gets back to normal, which I don't think is going to be this year. I think it's going to be next year potentially. I think hopefully the fact that people have been deprived of being able to do it for so long will mean they're going to there'll be some of that energy and some of that passion that comes back. At least for a period of time. Unfortunately, the human beings, I think, tend to get to a point where they start taking things for granted pretty quickly again. And I think we'll be back to normal, and 6 months later, everyone will be like, "Oh, fuck it. I don't feel like moshing, or I don't feel like getting really into what I'm seeing now. I'm not going to go watch this band. I've seen them 100 times." Me personally, if Rammstein or Biohazard come to town again, I am literally following them to every fucking venue that they play. And there's a couple of kind of key bands that I love seeing live, and those are at the very top. I haven't seen you guys yet either, so that's definitely on the list as well.
Yeah, well, as soon as gigs happening again, then I'm sure we'll be playing. But yeah, I'm the same. If Maiden come back to town, because they got cancelled due to the pandemic, which was gutting, because I've seen Iron Maiden about 20 times, my favourite band. So for them to get cancelled, I was like, oh, you bastard. So fingers crossed they'll do something. And I follow them around. I go to like 3 or 4 shows at a time. So that's the one I'm waiting for.
Have you ever gotten to meet any of the guys in Iron Maiden?
Funnily enough, I got flown by Bruce Dickinson to Norway to see Iron Maiden on the Bruce Air flight, and he was our pilot, and he came out and basically started chatting to everyone. But to be honest, like, I'm not really one for meeting famous people. Like, it doesn't really interest me as such. There's a few people that I've met in the past that I've been like, yeah, okay, this is cool. Like I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I managed to meet pretty much all of the original cast that I could at a convention, and that was pretty awesome. But like with Bruce Dickinson, it's different. Like Iron Maiden, like I say, you know, they've been with me since I was 11, and I'm now 41 this year. So like for me, meeting him, I kind of just shit myself and didn't know what to say, and was just kind of like head down, you know, and it was just like a small little boy, just scared. But yeah, what would you say to him that he hasn't heard a million times before? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I like your band. You know, he's heard that. He's not interested. You know, I've got nothing to talk
Bruce,
to
I'm such a fan.
I know. I've got nothing to talk to him about. You know, and
Yeah.
and they say don't meet your idols, because if they turn out to be pricks, then you're gutted, aren't you?
Dude, well, that's a morbid fear I have with the show. I kind of have to scout out people beforehand, because I you know, so if you, I don't know if you have much of the podcast you follow, but I am actually pretty studious in you know, who I invite on the show, because for exactly that reason, I'm terrified I meet somebody whose music I like and I think, what a fucking asshole, and it ruins it for me. I've had that once before where I met all of the guys from Slayer. And for whatever reason, I think Kerry King wasn't having the best day, and he was an absolute penis. Tom Araya, on the other hand, you know, made the whole thing worthwhile, because he was one of the nicest, most humble guys, and just, you know, he kind of made you just love the band even more. But yeah, Kerry was he wasn't the nicest guy. I didn't meet James Hetfield directly, but I was standing right in the front of the stage as he told off a fan for taking a photo with his phone. And I thought to myself, phones at shows are lame, but at the same time, this dude has paid, you know, 70 odd quid to come and see you. So, you know, he can kind of do what he wants.
I get it. Everyone's human. We all have bad days, you know, but I think when you're that big and you're in the limelight all the time, like, you've got to try and just ignore it as much as possible, haven't you? And try and be that person, because like you say, somebody's just spent 100 quid on their ticket to come and see your fucking band, you know, that they've probably saved up a long time to do that. But then, you know, they've got to factor in the fact that they've had to get to that gig, so that's probably another 50 quid, 100 quid, depending where they're from, you know, all the food and drink. They spent a lot of money seeing that person, and if they're a prick, you just think, well, why did I bother? You know what I mean? Like, it is shit. Like,
totally agree. And like I said, and so when it comes to, you know, doing a podcast like this, where you're kind of driving a conversation, stuff like that, I'm always very cautious about who I speak to, because it's I am terrified of the moment that I get this great guest on, you know, like an Attila or Mortus or somebody, and you get to 15 minutes and I start clock watching, and I'm like, oh my God, how the fuck am I going to pull a, you know, hour-long conversation out of this guy? Generally speaking, though, I'm always pleasantly surprised. I've had one interview so far out of, well, this will be episode 68, one out of 68, where I thought halfway in, if I cut this short right now and just did something by myself later on, would that work? And then it kind of, the person kind of relaxed a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't easy going.
You tend to find a lot of people in this sort of style of music are quite easygoing anyway. It's a misconception, isn't it, that everybody assumes that everyone into metal is a dick, or really, you know,
murderer, mate.
Yeah.
Serial killer. Did you watch that The Vanishing at Cecil Hotel on Netflix?
I haven't yet. No.
Don't ever bother. It's fucking awful. And the thing is, it's made by the same people that made the Ted Bundy documentary, which I really liked. And I fucking loved that Night Stalker documentary that they just did as well. I thought that was incredible.
That's on my list.
Yeah, definitely watch that. But this Vanishing at Cecil Hotel is diabolical. But the reason I bring it up, and I made the joke about serial murderer, basically this documentary, they have a bunch of fucking web sleuth nerds speaking untethered for about 4 episodes while they sift through the minutia of this woman's last days and her posts online, and the fact that she was very clearly, you know, going through some sort of mental illness or mental breakdown. The one thing that I've found most offensive was, at one point, these web sleuths decided that this, one particular black metal guy, a guy from Mexico called Pablo Vergara, who's performing under the stage name Morbid, that he was responsible for this woman's death, even though he wasn't in the US at the time. it was all based around the fact that he had recorded a video of himself at the Cecil Hotel a year previously, and some of the lyrics in his music was about killing people. And I thought to myself, how in the fucking 2021 is this what we've gotten to? And then the worst thing with the documentary is they kind of gloss over the fact that this poor guy's life was ruined. He was absolutely mobbed, on social media. People continually saying to him that, you did it, you're guilty, just confess. He tried to kill himself. And then they sort of, give him an opportunity to talk. And then it's almost like they just sort of move on and go, oh, well, his life is ruined, but, it's just part of the story. It's collateral damage. I was massively offended when I saw that, because again, I know from my own experience, most of what happens in metal is it's theatrics. It's a release. No one is legitimately sitting here and going, what would be a great idea today? To sacrifice myself to save. So, unless your name is John Odvite.
I was just about to say, unless your dissection. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people out there that are like that and, completely and utterly believe it 100%. But it is, heavy metal has always been theatrics. I mean, look at all them old bands. Look at Iron Maiden. Look at, King Diamond and Judas Priest and all the old school bands, Kiss. They're all theatrics. It's all about putting on a killer show that people remember. And I think that's something that we've been influenced by. We want to put on that show that people remember, and the visual side of things as well, because it does help the music. It's what people want.
1000% agree. You know what blew my mind is when I spoke to Ghoul, and he was saying to me they were really nervous about including this, having a production with their shows when they went on the Mysteries tour, because they said they didn't want it to be seen like they were selling out or whatever the case may be. And then when they did it, they realized how much people like it. I think nowadays when you see Mayhem, you can't imagine them without it. It would take away from the show. I want all of that stuff, because again, it goes back to what I said before. I think bands that at least have the theatrics and the production and the spectacle, it kind of brings back some of those memories of anticipating the band coming on stage and that excitement that you feel, when the lights go down and all of that sort of stuff.
Definitely. I mean, the bands that are memorable are the ones with the theatrics, and like you say, with Mayhem and even with like the way that Immortal look on stage, and just all these bands that have got sort of like an image that's going on, like they're the more memorable black metal bands, and I think it really helps. They're not just they're not just 5 or 6 dudes playing heavy music like most death metal bands are. They they don't necessarily do the theatrics, unless you like Exhumed or Ghoul or anything like that. But yeah, I think it really helps, and like you say, it is that nod to the first bands that you get into that it kind of gives you that nostalgia trip, doesn't it?
I find the idea of 5 people just standing on stage painfully boring. There's 1 or 2 bands that can get away with it. Paradise Lost, in my opinion, they can get away with it. They've got good enough songs, and there's enough charisma from those people that they can do it. But I remember seeing Zyklon, years back, and for a while they were playing quite frequently in London, and I loved their music so much at the time. I was so excited about seeing them live, and when I saw them, it was the biggest fucking disappointment, because it was literally like 4 guys at band practice. They would kind of look at each other in between songs and like, oh, let's do the next one. And it's to me that's inexcusable. I want a front man that's yelling and shouting at the audience. I want either yelling and shouting at the audience, or he does like Till from Rammstein, which is kind of this quiet, enigmatic figure. But I need something. There needs to be some kind of not act necessarily, but just a persona. A charisma of some sort coming off the stage.
Definitely. That's how all them bands are successful. Like you look at Alice Cooper, for example. I watched a documentary on him the other day, actually, and it shows how he went from obviously nothing and dressing very 70s into this superstar that he is now, and the theatrics behind it, and how it just got darker and darker as he went along, mainly because he was fueled by lots of substances. But it does help. Look at Rob Zombie, for example, and White Zombie. Yeah. They all looked, just good times. But I get what you mean with Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost was one of the first bands I saw at Donington '96, and I think they were the second band on the bill, actually. And I've loved them ever since. But literally all I remember from their set is Nick just shouting, "Come on, you fuckers," every 5 seconds. I don't think he even sang any words, I'm sure. But yeah, that was the sort of draconian times era. So, perfect timing. But
I was just about to say, you kind of caught them at the peak of their powers.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. I mean, that whole day was great. I mean, you had Fear Factory just come off of demanufacture. You had Paradise Lost with Draconian Times. You'd had Sepultura with Roots Bloody Roots, but that was when Max had to go home because Dana had just been killed. That was Pantera, so 98. That would have been what? That
would have been Reinventing the Steel. No, actually, no. Great Southern Trendkill.
That would have, yeah. So yeah, it was kind of that era where you just had most of the bands at their sort of peak. Good shows, really.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, brother, I'm going to let you go, and I will thoroughly look forward to seeing you guys play when all of this bullish has lifted. But thank you very, very much for your time. It was great catching up with you. And the good thing is, of that morbid fear that I had of getting someone on that whose music you like and you're nervous about what they're going to be like, didn't have it with you. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope that at some point we're going to get to have a couple of beers together in person.
Definitely. Yeah, as soon as like you say, the world returns to some kind of normality, then we'll definitely do that.
For sure. All right, brother. Take care of yourself.
Nice one. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye. track you just heard was Field of the Burned by the Infernal Sea. It's off a record called Negotium Crucis, which was released by the mighty Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records last year. Made it onto the top 20 of 2020. And I know that Dean doesn't do an awful lot of interviews, certainly not long-form interviews like this one, so I appreciate his time, and I hope that you guys enjoyed that. Right, time now for some reviews. Xeper out of Italy have just put out their first record in, I believe, 7 years. The record is called Ad Numen Satana, and I don't believe they're referring to Newman of Seinfeld, so I think that's a little more serious than that. But anyway, Ad Numen Satana has been put out on Soul Cellar Records. It is the follow-up to 2014's 11th Omega Constellation. If you are not familiar with Xeper, the music sounds, or at least in my opinion, bears more than a passing resemblance to the really kind of hypnotic, blasting black metal played by Gorgoroth and Cythereal. And Gu Hulu, I believe I'm pronouncing his stage name correctly, who's guitarist and bassist for Xeper, has actually stepped in as a live musician in the past for both of those bands, so it's probably not surprising. Ad Numen Satana is an absorbing and very enjoyable 33 minutes. I would say the only real negative to the record is the fact that it is only 33 minutes long, and you would imagine after a 7-year absence, maybe they would have been a little bit more generous with the content, but apparently not. I will say of their music, it actually really does work best when they slow things down and they focus on layering the keyboards, the riffs, and some just the seriously unhinged vocals that are present throughout the record into really kind of dark, brooding and atmospheric music like the track that I'm going to be playing for you guys very shortly, called Riding the Spiral of Lilith. And again, when you listen to that record, you kind of wish, just based on how epic that song is, and the fact that it's pretty lengthy, that the rest of the record, maybe had a couple more of those on, and that this was nearer 50 minutes, because I think that would have felt like a more solid comeback than this. I mean, this is the length of most EPs. But that being said, I am very glad to see these guys are back. Hopefully, they don't keep us waiting 7 years for another record. If you've not yet been convinced by my praises that I've heaped upon this record, then check out the next track. Like I said, it's called Riding the Spiral of Lilith. Riding the Spiral of Lilith by Zephyr, off of a record called Ad Numen Satana. It is available on Soul Cellar Records, definitely worth checking out. Another band worth checking out, Feral Light out of Minnesota. Now, if memory serves me correctly, Suffering Hour, who I reviewed last week, also come from Minnesota, so I don't know what the fuck they've released in the water over there, but clearly a couple of folks are drawing some serious satanic musical powers from it. But anyway, Feral Light have put out an EP called Ceremonial Tower. It is the follow-up to last year's Life Vapor release. I was not previously familiar with that album, I have to say. Having now listened to both Ceremonial Tower and Live Vapor, I potentially would have included these guys on my top 20 of 2020. I mean, the record is that good. And Ceremonial Tower, in many ways, just kind of follows up and builds on to what Live Vapor have done. Inexplicably, this band is unsigned. And again, add them to the long list of bands where, record A&R, or record label A&R, I should say, has just shit the bed. But anyway, the EP is 3 tracks, and if it doesn't make you want to immediately dig into their back catalogue, then you are probably deaf. This is exceptional stuff. The music is raw, emotive, aggressive. It kind of combines black metal with dark progressive rock elements that really lift each track to a place of distinction. And it reminds me at times of Cobalt, early Tombs. And when I say Cobalt, I mean particularly Eater of Birds or War Metal. But, Color Me, hugely impressed. There is clearly something extremely exciting going on in the Minnesota scene. And I would strongly suggest to everybody to check out Ceremonial Tower, along with Live Vapor that came out last year. This is one of my favorite tracks off of the EP. This is Feral Light with Cold Ground. Cold Ground by Feral Light off an EP called Ceremonial Tower. It is available on Bandcamp, so go check it out. Show them some love and support. I think the only physical release they've done for this is a run of 40 cassettes. So if you have a cassette player and you're one of the lucky 40, then add that to your collection. But either way, if you go there and you buy yourself some stuff and they ask you who sent you, then you let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere. And who knows? Maybe I'll invite these guys onto the show at some point in the not too distant future as well. I've got a couple of cool guests lined up actually. So next week I'm due to record an interview with two of the members of Ghosts of Atlantis. And then I think the next week I've been talking to the young buck who fronts Friedendal. I'm going to try and get him on as well. A couple of bigger bands, couple of grim underground cult bands, and that's, like I've said to you guys before, that's kind of how I want to do it. So I want to get a couple of bigger bands on, get a bit of attention onto the show, and then you use that as a platform to hopefully elevate some of the bands, that are in the underground scene that really deserve more attention than they're getting. So that's my strategy, and hopefully it pans out. Speaking of strategy, the strategy to close off all my shows is to talk shit about the news. So let's jump in and do that right now. Right, and since Metal Storm still haven't got their act together as far as their website is concerned, we're on Metal Injection this week. The first bit of news: Beavis and Butthead movie sequel confirmed for Paramount Plus. I read an article earlier today that I was going to rail on. There's some whack movie coming out on Netflix that I believe is being spearheaded by Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine called Metal Lords, and it's apparently a coming-of-age comedy. I absolutely detest crap like that because, one, they always depict everybody who listens to metal as brain-dead vagabonds, and just people that I look at and I feel nothing but loathing for. Now, that being said, as much as Beavis and Butthead play into the whole kind of caricature of rock and metal fans, I'm probably a bit of a hypocrite here, but I fucking love it. I always have. They're fucking hysterical. I can't really remember much of the movie, but I do remember discovering a bunch of very cool music on Beavis and Butthead back in the day, including, as most people did, God of Emptiness by Morbid Angel. I discovered Gwar on there. I remember hearing Prong for the first time. It was actually hearing Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck that made me get that record. So they're, let's see what comes of this movie. I won't exactly be, stopping or halting everything that I do to watch it, but it might be fun. Who knows? Right, moving on. Rockumentary metal fan gives awesome TED talk on finding your own way in life. Don't dress for success. I'm in two minds about that. I think that it really kind of depends on what your aptitude is, and what you're good at. Because let's be perfectly frank, if you're good at numbers and you're good at, say for example, what you're exceptionally good at is a skill or a set of skills that will make you very useful in a bank, or that will help you find success in a bank. As much as you may be Johnny Badass with your DSI t-shirt, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to strut around the bank wearing your DSI t-shirt. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. My big dream when I was young was to kind of carry on a radio show that I had in South Africa called the Inferno. I came to the UK. I very quickly realized that most English people are not interested in listening to a South African man talk shit and play metal. So those dreams were quickly dashed. And then I gradually fell into the world of recruitment, which is where I work now. And then I moved into corporate recruitment, which is where I am now, and I'm in a pretty senior position. And the reality of it is, much as I would love to walk around with my metal garb, and much as everybody that knows me and that works with me, is pretty clear on what I'm into and what I like, there is a kind of a time and a place for everything. I haven't listened to the TED Talk. Maybe there's nuance there that I'm missing, but I do think that sometimes people they kind of stick to this whole true to your own thing to a point where it's actually detrimental to them. So I would say absolutely don't give up, any of your principles. Don't give up your, don't give up on the stuff that you love, and don't try and conform. I mean, I've never ever done that. And frankly speaking, I don't actually think you need to do that, whether you're working in the most corporate job or not. But I do think you should also be smart about how you do things and where you do things. A guy interviewed me when I really at the start of my career. Something he said to me that really made me pause and think. Was he knew about everything that I was into. He said to me, I grew up, loving, Motorhead, AC/DC. I still like all of those things. I said, at the end of the day, we're not hiring a bunch of clones here. You can be whoever you want to be, but if you're going to sit in the corner looking maudlin or, not being part of the, not participating in stuff that the team is doing just because, you want to be different, then this is not the place for you. So, like I said, I don't think it's about compromise, but I think it's about knowing there's a time and a place for everything. That's my 2 cents on that, and folks might disagree with me on that. We'll probably agree to disagree, but that's just how it goes. I think success for some folks, absolutely, but at the same time, I'm not going to run around with a fucking face tattoo if I'm working in an office and then scream, why is nobody giving me a chance? Things just are as they are in society, unfortunately. I wish it were not so, but it is. Moonspell streams new song, The Hermit Saints. This album also came out over the weekend, and you'll notice that I didn't bother talking about it because the less said about this absolute shambles, the better. Like I've said about Moonspell, I was a fan of these guys when Under the Moonspell came out. I got Wolfheart, loved that. I got Irreligious, loved that. I was even on board when they put out Sin, which was a big departure. Most people felt it was a sellout. And I liked the direction they took in kind of their midway through their career. I think the record was called Darkest Hour. It might have been something else. Oh, sorry, Of Darkness and Hope. That's what it was called. That was really good. And there were a couple of records that they made kind of midway through their career that was excellent. Really kind of blended the best of the more accessible stuff that they had been doing on Sin with some of the earlier more, I guess, vintage black metal that they'd been putting out. And then I heard the first track off of this new record, and it is just so obvious how desperate they are to try and appeal to a wider audience. It doesn't just feel like a sellout, it feels like a coached sellout, and that to me is even worse. So yeah, like I said, I think it's absolutely diabolical, and that's why I wouldn't formally review it. It's fucking atrocious. Serge Tankian on new System of a Down music in 2021. I don't know. Those 2 tracks that they put out, I will confess, I don't actually think they're too terrible by System of a Down standards. But that fucking idiot over there in the back, I cannot stand the sight of. Right, let's see what else there is. A Metamorphosis. Willow Ryan of Body Void breaks down ecological collapse and the motives behind Bury Me Beneath This Rotting Earth. I saw John Kerry, the venerable John Kerry, said that we have 9 years left to live, much like in 2001, when An Inconvenient Truth told us that we were going to all die in 2014. The other thing I thought was very ironic about John Kerry is, one, he cruises around in a private jet, and two, he's just bought himself a house on Martha's Vineyard, which by their own projections will be underwater inside of 9 years if what he says is true. So John Kerry can fuck right off. I'm all about saving the environment. I think there's a couple of things that for me take more priority than getting people to drive electric cars. One of them is cleaning the plastic out of the ocean, as an example. But I will not be fucking lectured about about climate change by somebody who's cruising around in a private jet. It's like I said last week about the cult of celebrity. Leonardo DiCaprio, phenomenal actor, trying to tell us that we need to cut down on our emissions, but he flew a person to do his nails, I believe, 11,000 miles before an award show on a private jet. Fuck him. Right, let's see what else. Rob Zombie explains the title of his new album to Sherry Moon in funny new animated short. I'm quite looking forward to the new Rob Zombie record, even though the one thing that I'm getting a little annoyed by is that it seems like almost every single one of his interviews that are coming out at the moment invariably turns towards veganism. And then the other thing that I don't like, you guys know how your phone is basically listening to you, and if you say something, then all of a sudden, sorry, the dog is barking in the background. There's a Yeah, so how your phone's listening to you, and invariably there's a what's them? There's if you say something, then the phone is going to pick it up, and you'll start getting ads pushed to you. One thing that I can't understand is why the fuck am I getting 910 different ads for vegan brisket? This vegan barbecue menu blew my mind. This vegan burger tastes amazing. I'm not fucking interested. Like I've said, you will take my beef from my cold dead hands. I know how crazy that sounds, but yeah, like I said, I'm not going to stop eating meat ever. And vegan brisket, you can fuck right off. Anyways, moving on. D's Nuts, ex I Killed the Prom Queen bassist Sean Kennedy dies at 35. I don't know what he passed away of, but that's tragic. I quite like D's Nuts. I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but they got a couple of very, very cool songs. I can't remember what the track is, but anyone who comes up with a lyric as shamelessly stupid as "When it rains, it fucking pours," is cool in my count. Behemoth's Nurgle launches defense fund for blasphemy charges from Polish government. I didn't realize the seriousness of this until I saw the other day that he apparently could face 2 years in prison over this. So the article reads, Nurgle is not just one to sit there and take being called blasphemous. The Behemoth frontman has been convicted of blasphemy in Poland over a photo of himself from 2019 stepping on an image of the Virgin Mary. According to notes from Poland, Darski thus far has been ordered to pay 15,000 zloty or a $4,000 fine and 3,500 zloty or $942 court case fee. According to a Polish spokesperson, Nurgle publicly insulted the object of Christian religious worship. Nurgle was charged for a similar incident in 2013. Nurgle has launched the Ordo Blasphemia Fund, which will aid with defense fees for any artist charged in Poland for offending religious feelings. Do they say anything here about the 2-year prison sentence? I think that might be one of those. It's a little bit like the like the COVID fines. You could face 10 years in jail or £1,000 fine. Hopefully the guy doesn't end up in prison for that. But at the same time, I'm all for people's right to free speech. But like I said earlier, there's a time and a place for everything. If you're going to do stuff like that in Poland and you know the laws, it's no different to me running around in Dubai wearing a anti-Muslim T-shirt and then being incredulous when I'm arrested. It's just the saying "play stupid games, win stupid prizes" comes to mind. Cannibal Corpse is not safe for work. Inhumane Harvest video is not for the faint of heart. Let's take a gander. I'm not going to play the song. I'll just skip to the middle. But some of their music videos have actually been quite cool. I like the... I can't remember if it's the track, The Wretched Spawn. For me, The Wretched Spawn was kind of the last great Cannibal Corpse album. All the others I've liked when I've heard them, and then they just become infinitely forgettable. But this video looks pretty okay. The song I really, really like, though. Like I said to you guys, there we go. There's the guts. There's the beef. The song I was very impressed with, and again, I think it might be because my expectations were extraordinarily low, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to the looking forward to the record. What if Rammstein wrote Metallica's Enter Sandman? This is a guy called Dennis Puna. If you don't know him yet, go check out his channel on YouTube. He does these really cool reinterpretations. So it would be like, what if Typo Negative did, I can't remember what Alice in Chains track, but I mean, it's stuff like that. What if Typo Negative wrote Alice in Chains? What if Rammstein wrote Metallica? What if Metallica wrote Pantera? And he does it really, really well. I mean, he puts in vocals, he does everything. I'd say probably his best vocal impression is of Till from Rammstein. But generally speaking, just the reinterpretations, it's very, very smart, and some of it is really enjoyable. I mean, some of the Typo Negative stuff, he really gets spot on, maybe aside from the fact that he's got a bit of a Swedish accent and doesn't sound like Pete Rod of Steel. Rest in peace. But anyway. Right, D. Snyder calls Rock and Roll Hall of Fame committee members elitist assholes. I do think that, by their own standards, Twisted Sister should be in there. But then again, I think that D. Snyder is a total wank stain. Spotify promises CD quality audio with new Spotify hi-fi service. This is interesting. So I know about this story because it's something that I'd been waiting for a while. I'm not actually on Spotify as a user. Like I said to you guys last time, there's a couple of playlists that I've created on there, and obviously the show is on Spotify, and I think it's the show's biggest platform. But I've been waiting for a hi-fi service because I think the quality of the music at the moment is fucking atrocious. But it says here, Spotify is entering the world of hi-fi audio with their new Spotify hi-fi service. Starting later this year, premium Spotify members in select markets will have access to the CD quality lossless audio format as playback option. So no word on this going into effect for pricing for the streaming platform. Blah, blah, blah. It looks like it's going to be $15 to $20. I mean, I would say this: if you're listening to music on shitty little iPhone, earpads or earbuds or whatever the fuck they're called, you will not notice a difference. But if you listen to music on a decent system, it's pretty good news. If you do listen to music on a decent system, then the chances are very good that you probably don't use Spotify anymore and you've moved on to Tidal or Qobuz or something else, which is what I use. But the most important news really when it comes to hi-fi is that standing around probably 4 meters away from me right now are my new pair of 800 D3 Bowers and Wilkins floor stander speakers. They are monstrous. They weigh, I think, 105 kilos each. I had 2 guys carry them in here from the brilliant dealership Nantronics yesterday. And in between work calls, I managed to get them set up, towed in, and I gave them a couple of... I played a couple of test tracks on them. Some of my favorite test tracks are Marloom by Mayhem. I love anything by Paradise Lost because, generally speaking, the recording and the fidelity is really, really good. Everything in its Right Place by Radiohead, and yes, you can call me a poser and a sellout, but if you use high-end hi-fi, you'll understand exactly why I use that song. And then Chelsea Wolfe, because I like getting a female vocal on it because you can kind of get a real sense of the mid-range and the treble on the speakers. With the right song. But those speakers are absolutely fantastic. I've got a couple of more things that I want to change to the setup as it is right now. And I think once that's done, then I'll do an update for y'all. And as I said last week, if any of you guys want to put together a decent system, and you want to do something secondhand, or you want to go on eBay and you want to do some stuff and you just want a bit of advice, I've gone down the rabbit hole on this further than probably anything other than actual music in my life. So I've seen an awful lot, and I've figured out quite a lot for myself. So I'm more than happy to help. Just hit me up on social media or send me an email. I've already answered a bunch of people's questions about this, and I'm more than happy to answer yours as well. And I think especially if you're living in the States or you're living in the UK, the secondhand scene is fucking crazy. And if you've got £1,000 to spare or you've got $1,000 to spare, you can put together a decent setup. I worked out a decent setup the other day for about just for fun. I worked out a setup that cost about $900. And it had a integrated amplifier with a phono stage, 2 decent bookshelf speakers, a record player and a CD player and a DAC. And obviously, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I said DAC, it's a digital to analog converter. It's how you play music through a computer or through a streamer. Like I said, hit me up if you have any. If you have any questions about it, and if you guys want to see the hi-fi special sooner than later, let me know. I love talking about hi-fi. I actually thought prior to Into the Necrosphere starting, one of the things that I was thinking of doing was starting a hi-fi channel. But that obviously was just an excuse to get free shit. Chris Adler says he left Lamb of God because it was toxic. I can see why it would be toxic, because if I listen to most of the interviews by these guys, it's some blowhard bullshit. Chris Adler has always seemed to me like a nice guy. He's a fucking phenomenal drummer. I just think it's a shame that he's out of Lamb of God, because his talents in this Firstborn crap is totally wasted. Finally, Tombs music video for Secrets of the Black Sun. Fuck these guys, they say. It's pretty dismal. They can go fuck themselves. The video is great. The song is great. Tombs is great. And tonight, I'm going to be recording an episode of Everything Went Black with Mike Hill of Tombs. So that was a nice segue into it. And then, that should be coming out. It might actually even be out before this episode is released. So check it out. I mean, I'm a big fan of Mike as a person. I think he and I think it's fair to say, have become pretty good friends over the last couple of probably the last 12 months. And he's just one of those guys where as soon as I had him on the show for the first time, you kind of know inside of about probably 5 minutes how good the interview is going to be. Some interviews you have to work a little harder on than others. With him, that was not the case. He was just a great dude from the get go. What a stupid fucking headline. Anyway, and if you, by the way, if you've not yet checked out that new Tombs album, I think it was number 8 on my top 20 of 2020. I speak under correction there, but I absolutely loved it, and I could not more strongly suggest you check it out. That and Monarchy of Shadows. Very, very, very cool stuff. I think that is pretty much it for the news, guys. That, of course, means that it is just about that time. Tragic, I know, but I have to say goodbye. I will be back next Tuesday. Right now, the plan, like I said, is to have the gentleman from Ghosts of Atlantis on the podcast with me. I'm always a little wary of stuff being cancelled at the last minute, though, so I'm not making any promises, but it's supposed to be recorded next week. And then the week after, Fredensdal, I think, is going to be on tap. So good stuff coming your way, but I appreciate the support as always. I hope that wherever it is you guys are, whatever it is you're doing, I hope you're safe, healthy, and well. From the mean streets of Great Shefford, I am wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.